day to you. Welcome to this session of Conestoga Minds. My name is ShankhaSBhattacharyya and I am a program coordinator in the School of Business. In today's session, you will see a presentation based on my independent research study. The theme of the research study was investigating employment barriers for single parents in Waterloo Region. This research study was conducted under the Office of Research Services under a grant received by the CNERG program. To talk a bit about myself, my career at Conestoga College began in 2016, and today I am a program coordinator in the School of Business, managing the Professional Accounting Practice program. My education background consists of an MBA from the Schulich School of Business at York University, and I also hold the CPA CMA designation from CPA Ontario. My prior research experiences relate to a strategic study program done during my MBA program and also an article I published in the Institute of Business Forecasting, which comes out of New York. The agenda that we have today will cover the following track. We will begin with a discussion about why I chose this research topic. Then we are going to move on to discuss the operational aspects of this research, which will be in turn followed by my research findings. And then we come to the core of the presentation, which is the recommendations, which will be followed in turn by literature reviews, which I did, and the expert references whose motivations I have incorporated in my recommendation for this program. To begin with then, let me answer the burning question of why I chose this as a research topic. Now, I truly believe that the real value out of knowledge is created when knowledge silos are dissolved, they're broken down, and we present an integrative view of knowledge to the society. So with that in mind, I chose to do this research study. If you look at this diagram and look at the central core where we have the knowledge domains that were applied for this research, and you can see that there are three distinct research areas or knowledge areas: strategic management, public policy, and organizational development. So I took knowledge from these three areas and then took it forward as represented in the next segment of challenges and asked myself that what are the key challenges at a high level facing our society today. And I came up with one which relates to, there are multiple challenges actually. And along with that, I also looked at what are the opportunities that our society is presenting itself today post-COVID, where hybrid work has become the norm. Now, these high-level options were then transferred to a specific cause, which is no poverty and reduced inequality. Now, it is a blend of all these three disciplines which were applied to a challenge which I felt was critical for our society, which is examining employment barriers facing single parents. The first such example of integrative study came from this book called Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid, where principles of strategic management were applied to solve the problem of poverty. And emerging out of this study was an entirely new area of business, which was termed as social enterprises. And here is an example of a leading eyeglass retailer that is engaged in social enterprise work. So these Warby Parker, they actually donate eyeglasses out of the revenue that they earn to people who are needy and who would not otherwise have been able to afford eyeglasses. In this section, I will discuss the operational aspects of my research study, meaning what did we actually do in the ground. To begin with, I will discuss the research questions, which were actually the starting point of the research study, followed by developing a value proposition from these research questions. This will be followed by a discussion on the framework which I applied, which is the complex adaptive system framework, Moving on to what did I actually do in terms of functions, and then we'll end with an acknowledgement of our research team. The research questions are actually like a lighthouse. They show us in the right direction. And for the purpose of my research study, the first research question was investigating employment barriers for single parents in Waterloo Region. Now, single parents as such are constrained by lack of time, having to prioritize looking after their children. So as a result of which, there are social barriers, and then there are other skill-related barriers as well. So the goal, therefore, was to investigate them. And along with that, we now know that there are new forms of work which have emerged, mostly hybrid work. So I wanted to really combine the barriers with the new opportunities and then present a value proposition for the single parent community. By value proposition, what I mean is that the single parents can ask themselves that what is in there for me when these two things come together. Employment barriers are removed, and then they are able to harness the new opportunities that come in front of them. Now, to conduct this study, I used the framework of complex adaptive system. So I took the research questions and then deconstructed them into 24 subdomains, like each individual areas. And then in the next step, my goal was to analyze each subdomain and then finally to build a correlation between two or more such subdomains. So an example here, we will see that there are 5 subdomains which show up. To begin with, let us begin with the subdomain on the far left, which is women participation rate in the workforce. So when we went to analyze the women participation rate in the workforce, we can find that it is not really at the optimal level. So if it is not at the optimal level, begs the question that what we can do next. Now, there are hybrid jobs which are available. There are numerous websites now which are only open for hybrid jobs. We looked at them. Now, moving forward, when women can work on hybrid jobs through this website, leads them to a new term called mompreneur, meaning moms as entrepreneurs. So that gives rise to another employment or work opportunity, I would say, as mompreneurs. Now, mompreneurs are a good fit in the current shared economy that we are in. We know about Uber, we know about Airbnb, and such shared economy presents a new opportunity for mompreneurs. And of course, along with that, when there is entrepreneurship, we can't leave out the concept of risks. Therefore, we took a look at the risks as well. So in this way, through this example, we can see that we connected 5 subdomains, and then we build up a research hypothesis connecting each of them to identify the opportunities that may lie ahead. So the research activity cycle is about the workflow, about what we did. So starting from top left, we had to obtain a certification from the college because we were conducting interview with the humans. And then with that, we have to submit a proposal to the research ethics board of our college, which you see towards the right on the first row, called REB. And then we get the REB approval. And after the REB approval is done, then we start the in-person campaign. We went to public libraries in the Waterloo region, and then we also conducted a direct mail campaign to using the Canada Post database. So our research team had 3 members, me as the principal researcher, and then we had 2 research assistants. They came with complementary skill sets. One of them was good at social media, and the other one was good in the research part, as a result of which we built a very strong and cohesive team and came out with reasonably good results. At this time, allow me to pause and reflect on what I have spoken so far. To begin with, I explain why I am doing this research project. And then I went forward to explain the process of research, the real activity that actually went into it. So going forward, I will go forward and discuss what I found in the research, and that will be followed by my set of recommendations. So what did I find at a very high level when I undertook this research? And this result actually came to me as quite a surprise. I found out that the economic support to single parents is not yet a public policy priority in Canada, which sounds a little unfortunate, but this is true. And I can make this statement when I compare Canada with two other jurisdictions. The first one is the European Union. So in the European Union, we see that they already have a well-defined public policy, and that is exemplified in the public policy document which they published in November 2020. Moving forward, the other domain which I looked at is US. And the US actually demonstrates a very high level of social awareness. And that is exemplified by these three factors. Number one is March 21st is observed as the Single Parents' Day in the US. Then there is a nationwide organization called Parents Without Partners. And finally, there are a host, like I would say, numerous, books which talk about women taking charge of their financial security. Here we see an example of two such books. The first one is called Money Makeovers, and the second one is Solopreneurs, which discusses how single parents or single moms actually can build a successful home-based business. In comparison, here is where we stand in Canada at this time. At the federal level, the closest program we have is called the Women's Work Readiness Employment Program. At the provincial level, the closest program is Ontario Works. And then at the municipal level, what we have is support for women crisis management centers, and the example of which is the Working Center in Kitchener. Moving forward then, so till this time, we have identified the need in the previous section. Now, in this section, we are going to provide a solution to the needs. Now, given the fact that the challenge facing single parents is not yet a high priority in the public domain, we need responses at two levels, at the individual level and as well as the institutional level. To address these challenges, I recommend that we originate a think tank. And the think tank will be called CASPCOM, meaning Center for Advancement of Single Parent Communities. Why a think tank, you may ask? Now, think tanks actually do research in a very focused area. And as a result of this, the recommendations provided by a think tank actually spread around, diffuse better in the community, and they are more acceptable by public policymakers. And examples of such think tanks, which we commonly hear about, are the C.D. Howe Institute, the Fraser Institute, and our local CIGI. The Fraser Institute may sound very familiar because they publish ratings of schools in our communities, and we look at those ratings before thinking of enrolling our child in them. Now that we have decided on originating a think tank, begs the question that what are the strategic functions which this think tank is going to deliver on? So if we start at the top right, the first strategic function would be public policy advocacy. Going down in a clockwise direction, we see that the next strategic function is SDG initiatives, meaning Sustainable Development Goal initiatives. Going forward further in a clockwise direction, the next one would be business incubation. Now that we know what the strategic delivery points are, in the next step, we need to decide on a structure. So unless there is a structure that matches the strategic goals, it is quite challenging to implement the goals that we have set ourselves for. So therefore, the structure we recommend is that we need a leader, okay? Or we need three divisions actually in this case, an advocacy division, an SDG division, and a business incubator division. Now, how would we staff these divisions? At the very top, we will have an executive director, followed by a manager for the advocacy division, then a manager for the SDG division, and then finally a manager for the incubator division. Let's take a look at the financial metrics applicable for our newly recommended think tank. In the first year, we are projecting an expenditure of $350,000. This will go up. This will remain the same rather in year 2, and then going up to $370 in year 3, $392 in year 4, and $415,000 in year 5. Our goal is to be financially independent in year 1, and as the word spreads of the good work this think tank is doing, we hope to generate support from the government and other agencies to the extent of 50% for each year going forward from year 2. Now, how is this think tank going to address the needs? So that is the question I'm trying to answer here. So we said that our overarching goal is support to single parents. And we also said that this goal has to be met at 2 levels, at an institutional level and at an individual level. Now here we are saying that at the institutional level, the theme would be advocacy. And that advocacy would occur, one is to the federal government, and then next is to the provincial and municipal government. And then the business incubator would address the needs on an individual level for single parents through skills development and then subsequent emergence as solopreneurs. Now that we have proposed 3 divisions, let us also see that how each of these divisions will actually feed into one another. The advocacy division would be reaching out to policymakers, to the intellectual community, and to the single parent community, and raising an awareness at a very high level. So once that awareness is developed, the awareness will then percolate down to more segmented sections of our community. Mostly those who are not single parents will become aware of the challenges faced by single parents and be more receptive to providing accommodations to the single parent community. So once that is done, the business incubator division will start, and they will provide business development skills, and also which will eventually lead to business incubation for single parents. Each division will have a separate set of stakeholders to deal with. The advocacy division will deal with public policymakers. The SDG division will deal with members of the community who are not single parents, and the business incubator division will deal with single parents specifically. Now, at the center of this skills development is the notion of called value creation. So once we create value, the skills which we are trying to build in the entrepreneurs are eventually geared towards delivering a certain level of value to the target audience. Now, begs the question that why we need to engage in this process of value creation. So we can have quotes from 2 speakers. The first one is Little Marom, who says that value is your North Star. So North Star is the guide. So once you are clear that what value you are going to generate, every activity of yours, every thought of yours will be eventually directed towards that value creation process. Secondly, another prominent entrepreneur, Naval, says that you earn with your mind and not with your time. And this is exactly the transition that we are trying to achieve with the single parent community. Nowadays, they may be just working on an hourly basis and earning only a certain amount. But once they are able to transform their hourly earnings through intellectual means, then they start earning with their minds and will certainly be able to earn much more. Now, going forward, the value creation can have several perspectives. But here, for this community, the value creation would occur on the theme of caring. Now, single parents are already caring for their children, and it is only a question of expanding this theme of care to the larger community. So therefore, more or less, the value creation methodology stands to be reasonably foolproof. What is the process then of transitioning single parents from the current phase to a phase where they build skills and then they can offer the skills to the broader community? So if you look down, number 1 is that they have to identify a skill. Say, for example, one skill could be providing voiceover. That could be one. And then we need to offer the skill as a service. So in a sense that, where can that voiceover be applied? So today, the world is full of videos. So they can collaborate with a video producer and use their voice as a video backup. So number 3 is that how are they going to find such opportunities? Today, there are numerous websites which are remote only. And such websites would be quite useful in helping them find work. So once they have found reasonable work, they have established a name for themselves in the community, then they start to grow as sole proprietors. Once they have that volume, then the sole proprietorship business can be expanded, and then they can incorporate their business. So once the businesses are incorporated, that is not the end of the journey. They are further encouraged then to aggregate their businesses and form cooperatives. So in that way, their businesses stand scaled up. Canada has quite a few examples of such cooperatives. The Dairy Producers Association is a cooperative, and in Quebec, the Desjardins also is a prominent cooperative operating out of Quebec. And here next is the 3-year timeline. So what would this think tank be doing in the first 3 years? So in year 1, we'll hire team members, prepare a budget, and implement the basic goals for year 1. In year 2, we'll implement the plan, and we will hold skill fairs showcasing the talent of single parents. So if we bring, like for example, 100 single parents showcasing their skills, the scale of showcase is bound to attract attention and lead them to further work-related opportunities. And finally, we take this forward, and then we would hopefully be able to encourage government to take a decision in providing accommodation or support to our single-parent community. And I will end this session with a quote from the Toronto Raptors president, Masai Ujiri, and this is what he said at the CPA conference. He said that if you want your organization to excel, you hire women. At this point, let me pause again and connect the dots with what I spoke of since the last pause I took. So for this segment, I began with a discussion of my research findings. And we identified a big gap to say that the need for the single-parent community is not yet a public policy priority. So to address the needs, I recommended that we originate a think tank. And that think tank addresses the needs at the institutional level and as well as at the individual level. Then we discussed about the structure, the strategic goals of the think tank, the structure needed to support it, the budget, and how the process would eventually work out. In the next section, I'm going to provide you with the background knowledge that I gained while doing this research project. And here are some of the books. So the first one is called The Art of Start, written by Guy Kawasaki. And this is really like at the core of any entrepreneur's journey. Going forward, the next one was called The On-Demand Brand, following which was The Entrepreneur Mind. And then the next one by Donny Deutsch was the one called The Big Idea. Moving forward, there are 2 more. So you want to start a side hustle, and the next one is about digital marketing, marketing in the moment. The next 2 particularly stand out because the first one here is called Upstream. And as you can see, the subtitle says the quest to solve problems before they can happen. And that is exactly what we are trying to do for single parents here. And the next one, it says converting intangible assets into tangible outcomes. And that is exactly our goal in this case as well. We are trying to take skills of single parents, which are intangible attributes, and then converting them into meaningful value propositions, which are required by the community at large. Next one is the 1-Minute Entrepreneur from the same author who brought us the 1-Minute Manager. And next one is Mom Inc. on the theme of mompreneurship. Next one is called The Idea Writers, How to Do Copywriting, very important in today's market. Next one is Ladies Who Launch, quite evident. And then here is the report that I referenced earlier, prepared by the European Union. Next one is Go It Alone. This is a reassurance the author is providing that you don't need a team, you don't need a group. you can go it alone. On this theme of go it alone, there are 2 more books. One is called 100 Side Hustles that tell you clearly that which are the 100 side hustles that you can actually start with. And then the next one is called Brave, Not Perfect, meaning in your journey for entrepreneurship, what you really need is guts and not to be perfect. The next 2 are Business in Every Woman and Money Smart Solopreneur, Following Through, Future Proof, and Social Selling Mastery. And that ends this section of literature review. And there are three experts whom I looked at. One I told you about Masai Ujiri. Next one is here Little Marom. She is an innovation strategist and does a lot of work about innovation and entrepreneurship. The next one is Naval Ravikant. He is a leading entrepreneur as well. And he based his life, he was inspired by his entrepreneurial journey by this book called The Beginning of Infinity. That brings me to the end of my presentation. If you like the concept and the work I did, I'm happy to hear from you further. So do write to me at this email, survey33@conestogac.on.ca. And thank you so very much for being with me through this session of Conestoga Minds.